Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ben, and this is the Smoking Hot Confessions BBQ Podcast. Hey family, I hope you're well wherever you are and you got that thin blue smoke rolling. This is episode 9 of season 7, where we're focusing on the barbecue scene in this beautiful wide brown land that is Australia. I've started off this season by talking to the top 5 ABA and KCBS teams, and today's guest is Dan White from Country Boys BBQ. Now, Dan and his team are well known for two things. One, of course, winning barbecue competitions. And two, the distances they're willing to travel for a barbecue comp. Now, I last saw Dan in person in Townsville. I flew there and back. He drove 16 hours each way with his team. So we're going to get the story behind that. It's going to be pretty cool. We're also going to find out how Dan got into barbecue, his origin story, if you will. We're going to find out about his 2019, how that went, and I'm pretty sure he's got some big plans for 2020. I don't know if you've been watching on the socials. He has just published a brand new logo. So he's obviously got some things on the boil, and we're going to ask him about that, and we're going to find out all about that as well. At the time of recording, he's just finished competing at Hervey Bay, so we're going to get into that. I couldn't be there this year. I had some, let's say, personal issues with a disgruntled landscaper that I had to deal with, so I couldn't make it up to Hervey Bay. We're going to talk about road tripping for barbecue, as I said before, and Dan also is equally comfortable competing solo or competing in a team. So we're going to talk about the differences there and the different challenges, the pros and cons of each team format. And then we're going to get into open beef. Now, Dan is very pro open beef, which is a bit of a controversial kind of standpoint at the moment. But he has a background in butchery. So his insights into the different cuts that are possible to go into a box are going to be very, very interesting. So I'm super excited about hearing all about that. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this podcast.
This is the internationally awarded Smoking Hot Confessions BBQ Podcast with your host, Ben Arnott. How long's it been since your last confession?
Hey Dan, welcome to the confessional. Thank you for joining me tonight on the show.
G'day Ben, thanks for having me.
Anytime, my friend. You've been a good friend of the show for a long time, and it's great to have you in here for a deep dive episode of the podcast.
Thanks, mate.
So let's kick things off with your origin story. I'm pretty sure that everyone who's listening to this podcast is going to know who Country Boys BBQ are or is, but tell us how it all started.
It all started back in 2016, I suppose, like with a lot of people who have got into barbecue and things like that. It all started with we were watching television. We came across the Barbecue Pitmaster show, my friend Andrew and I. We sort of watched a couple of episodes and thought this is amazing sort of thing. We done a bit of a Google, and it actually came up with Barbecue Mafia from Brisbane here as well. And it just so happened that sort of the next weekend they were having a barbecue masterclass with Shank Brothers at I think it's the barbecue place, I think it's called, or something like that. And I got talking to Drew from the Mafia, and I spoke to him for about 20 minutes about pork ribs. I mean, everybody, you go to the pub or you go out and it's pork ribs is always on the menu, and I absolutely love them. So, and they were actually cooking them over charcoal, and I'd never seen it before done like that. And when I got to taste it, it just sort of blew my mind. And I, as I say, I sat there and talked to Drew for a little bit, and it just sort of went from there. We went back, and I don't know, a lot of people may have seen our pit. It's an old boat trail that we actually built a barbecue on, and we went back home, Andrew and I, and we sort of spoke about what we wanted to do, and that was it. We wanted to do comp barbecue, so we built a barbecue on our boat trailer, and have been travelling around ever since, mate.
Mate, that is fantastic. If anyone's going to get you into barbecue, it would be the Mafia and the Shank guys for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I can't, as I say, I can't thank them guys enough. It's Even today, it's, you know, I talk to those guys, and I still hold them in such high regard. That they're the people that have been able to help, and they still inspire me with some of the things that they put out. It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, the creativity of both those guys, those teams is just phenomenal. It's amazing stuff. So, were you already into cooking barbecue in the backyard, like low and slow barbecue, before then, or did you just jump straight into competition barbecue?
No, I sort of jumped straight into competition barbecue, but being a butcher and things like that, I started my apprenticeship out in the bush, and we used to make all of our own hams and bacons and small goods and things like that. So,
so good.
A little bit of smoking side of things, but never actually had cooked a brisket as far as I was concerned. You know, brisket was either diced up or it was corned for corned beef sort of thing. I'd never actually heard of brisket being, you know, slow cooked or anything like that. So it was quite a learning curve sort of thing to be able to cook a brisket and have it taste pretty good.
So how many goes did it take before you got a brisket that you were happy with? Did you just sort of pick it up straight away, or are you a bit like me and it sort of took a while to get around the brisket?
Well, Ben, if you've hung around Country Boys enough to know that we still aren't able to cook the perfect comp brisket. We get some good calls, there's no doubt about it, but for a consistent sort of brisket sort of cook, we're still chasing it. It's the hardest sort of cut to be able to master, and I've tasted some phenomenal briskets. Ash from Manning Valley, he's one of the best brisket cooks that I know. Chris from the Smoking Hot Bros, even their briskets are phenomenal. And that's what I strive to do, is just keep up with them guys. And it's just one of those things. I'm still chasing it.
Yeah. At Ash in particular, and as you said, Chris as well. But yeah, I mean, Ash has travelled to the US. He's up for his third round at the World Barbecue Championships now, all based on his brisket. So that guy definitely knows what he's doing with brisket.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, I've competed with him on my team as well a couple of times, and I mean, if you get the chance to taste his burn ends, I mean, they are just phenomenal. Seriously, they are amazing. And as I say, that's the sort of thing that I strive to do, is to get something, because obviously I'm up against them guys, so I need to be able to compete up to their level. So I'm always chasing sort of the perfect brisket.
Yeah. You mentioned bird ends. They're one of my favourites, and you always hear them described as like meat marshmallows. And I'd never really sort of found one that had the consistency or the mouthfeel of a marshmallow until I tried Scotch and Smoke's burn ends down at Meatstock Melbourne there one year. Have you ever tried some of Nick's?
Oh, absolutely. He was sort of behind us at the Invitational. And I mean, them guys as well are another crew that are just phenomenal cooks as well.
Yeah, I don't know what witchcraft he does on those burnt ends, but man, I want to learn. I want to find out what that is, because they were insane.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so I guess that brings us up to 2019. So if you started in 16, 17, 18, 19 would have been your fourth year in competition barbecue. Tell us about how the year went for you.
2019, it was pretty good. We only did 10 competitions throughout the year. I did what we would call two solo competitions by myself. So eight as a sort of a full team. We didn't do too bad. We worked it out. We did over 41,000 kilometres. Is what our pit trailer had actually done with all the comps that we did. We did a couple of classes up at Townsville, and as well, 2 classes up at Townsville. So it was sort of a given that we had to, go to Townsville. Got such a great love and respect for North Queensland barbecue, especially with having mates up there that have cooked with me, like Travis from TB2, and got Michael from Riverway Meats up there, who's a great bloke too. So it was good just to go up there and cook up there again. And that's where I last saw you. It was just a great sort of year for us. We finished 5th overall, which is pretty huge with the caliber of cooks that are turning up to these barbecue comps week in and week out. It's just, you've got to be on your A game all the time, and it's one of those things that anybody can win. It's really, the caliber of cooks now is just amazing.
Oh yeah, you see the photos that people are putting out of their competition boxes, and I look at them and I just go, wow, like the competition scene is just so sharp at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have a look at back at some of the photos that we took of our boxes, and I've left them up. I've even left them up on our social pages, and you go back to have a look at those. And we did Up and Smoke in Adelaide, I think, in 2000 I think it was 16 or 17. I have a look at that box, and it was first place in pork ribs. And I look at that box, and we were in our first season sort of thing in that, and I look at what we're turning in now, and the people that are competing now, it's only their second, or third sort of comp, and they're turning in boxes very similar. And I go, this has taken me 2 or 3 years to learn how to box properly. And you guys are doing it amazing.
Yeah, the learning curve seems to be just getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Now, you mentioned before that you only did 10 competitions. Now, to most people listening, that is a ton of competitions, but how many do you usually do in a year?
We normally do between that 10 to 14 sort of comps a year. And that's sort of ABA and KCBS. But now with the sort of the SCA as well, sort of we're chasing those sorts of points as well. And it's just another great sort of thing that we're able to sort of do at a competition as well. The Saturday sort of aspect of it as well is bump in and get an SCA cook done, especially with the meat stocks or the Brisbane Barbecue Festival or something like that. It's also good, for the public to be able to see something when they come to these events as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit rough when they turn up on the Monday and there's kind of not a whole lot of stuff going on until 10 o'clock at night. So,
Absolutely.
The SCA certainly it is a draw card for the crowd. Now, I was going to ask about the SCA and if that was something that you're into. So obviously it is.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's just great. I mean, it's being able to cook a steak and things like that, but it's also too all the other ancillary categories that are around. I think it just goes so well with barbecue and mateship and things like that. What barbecue's all about, and like who doesn't like a good hot dog, or who doesn't spruik about who makes the best chicken wings and things like that. So, I mean, the SCA is just another good way of being able to still be with your mates and being able to cook some food.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, do you have any chefs in your team?
I do. I have Dave from Low and Slow Meat Co. He's one of our full-time sort of members. He pretty much comes to 90% of the competitions with me. That he'll either fly in or drive up with me, depending on sort of how tight his schedule is with his kids and things like that. But he's definitely there all the time.
And how does he like the SCA? Because I've heard other teams talk and they say that the chefs on their team either really love it or they really don't, because all the emphasis on the creativity and the precision and the presentation it feels too much like the restaurant for them?
He's very particular. He is when the box closed, he's the last one to sort of pick at it or look at it. Use tweezers to make sure everything's right. So for him, I think the burger side of things and obviously your wings and all those sorts of things, it's sort of just good to be able to do something that's sort of simple, if it could be called simple, but also too he's got his a bit of a creative flair and those sorts of things too, for the way that he either garnishes the box or prepares the burger.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. And you also said that you'd done 41,000 kilometres on your homemade smoker boat trailer. Was that just this year, or is that in the last 5 years?
No, that's just last year.
Oh my God.
Just last year. I mean, we did as we spoke about before, we went obviously to Townsville. So there's 1,600 Ks up and back, because I don't actually live in Brisbane. I live sort of out of Brisbane, a bit past Ipswich. We also did Robert Thraves' Meat and Mudgee. We went to Mudgee. So by the time we went through the back way and things like that, there's nearly 1,000 Ks through there with roadworks.
That's each way, yeah.
Yeah, we went to Girical and things like that, and a few competitions that we went to Sydney. So it doesn't take that long to really rack up those 40,000 Ks in a year.
No, it'd be quite easy when you sort of put it like that. And so we're going to sort of get into the interstate travel a bit later on. But why do you sort of look for competitions that are interstate?
Well, it's with our sponsors and things like that. If our sponsors jump on board on a particular competition or things like, we like to go there and represent our sponsors as well. But also too, if we're not able to all be together cooking that particular weekend, but like Townsville, for instance, as I said, we went up there and done some barbecue classes. But Girical, for instance, with Mitch from Badass Barbecue, we use their injections and some of their rubs and things like that. And pretty much that Mitch had already won that twice before. And, Badass Barbecue sort of had a bit of a year off sort of competing and things like that. But also too, with our, as I said, with our sponsorship and things like that, it was like, well, we'll go because it's sort of Mitch's home sort of comp. He was living around there at the time, and so we went down there and actually won the Girical comp as well. So it was just good to do those sorts of things for your sponsors.
Yeah, super cool. So of all those competitions then, you mentioned Girical, it's not Meat in Mudgee, and
yes.
Townsville, Brisbane Barbecue. What was your favourite competition of 2019 and why?
I've got to say, it was Townsville.
Me too, I think.
It was Townsville. The atmosphere that was up there was amazing, I think, because, it's so fresh and so new. So you feed off that energy as well. The guys put on such a great comp, and they, they said to us, like, there's going to be, we said like 10:30, I think it was, or 11 o'clock is the opening time for the public to come and watch. But we had people coming in at 8 o'clock in the morning talk to us. And, it was just amazing to have that sort of energy around you where people are that excited about barbecue, because it sort of reinvigorates you again and gets you cooking better. I mean, there was some there's some fantastic. I mean, you had Chris from MyQ from you. You had Daniel Barrett flew in all the way from Melbourne up there for that sort of comp. And I mean, the caliber of cooks that North Queensland has, it's just the travel that they, that obviously that they would have to travel to do a comp. But I mean, the caliber of cooks that they got up there was just phenomenal. It really was. Tasting some of their food, you had people bringing you food all the time. But it was great. It was probably the best comp that I'd done in a very, very long time.
I really enjoyed it too, and I'm super keen for this year. Have you seen who the special guest is that they've brought in?
No, I haven't.
They're bringing in Diva Q.
Oh, that's amazing.
Danielle Bennett. How awesome is that going to be?
That's amazing.
I can just imagine how excited the girls from Queens of Q are going to be about that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and those girls can cue.
Oh, absolutely. That was their first comp, and they got multiple calls. That was madness.
Oh, I mean, I think the girls got 4th overall.
They did, yeah.
And I mean, that is just crazy. I mean, obviously, as I said, the girls can absolutely cook, but to be able to get such a high sort of placing, especially with, as I said, the caliber of cooks. Travis was there from TB2, and he definitely knows how to cook. He's cooked with me 4 or 5 times, so he definitely knows what's going on as well, and he's cooked himself a few times in comp. So, good to them.
Yeah, they are very good. Now, so that's 2019. You released a photo on Facebook there just a few days ago, maybe a week ago, of a brand new logo. So I'm assuming you've got big plans for 2020. What do you got in the pipeline that you can share with us?
So 2020 was just about bringing in, making things new again. Really, we've a lot of people might know Blair from Bear's Barbecue or Crafted Q or even Lane's Barbecue with Brett Stokes, one of our other sponsors. But Blair's also cooked with me multiple times as well. And I was talking to Blair, and he just said that he wanted to get back into comp barbecue and things like that. We just got to talking, and he was more or less just hey, do you want another teammate? And I just went, you know what? Sure, we've cooked heaps of times together, and we're mates outside of barbecue and things like that as well. So it all just seemed to fit, and we were just talking, and I went about a new logo, and he went, okay. So he set to designing a new logo, and when I looked at it, we just put it up on our chat that we have for the team, and everybody was just in agreement that this is amazing. So we have just decided to go with that. We've got a new smoker in the works as well.
Ooh, is Blair in on that? Because I know he makes some pretty sexy smokers himself.
Yeah, so talking to Blair and things like that, as you know, the boat trailer definitely does have a lot of kilometres under its belt. Even for this, I actually cracked the chassis in it on the way home from the Invitational, and when I got it home, I washed it out and put it in the shed sort of thing, and I thought I'll fix that. And then 8 weeks went past, and I pulled it out to pack it all up to head to Harvey Bay, and then I realised that we hadn't fixed it, so it was a case of ringing a mate of mine, Ben, and Ben came over with us, and we fixed it up and loaded it and headed pretty much straight to Harvey Bay that morning.
Would you just sort of tack weld the cracks back together or something?
No, Ben's not like that. It has to be fixed properly, otherwise, he said it's still driveway warranty. Once you leave, there's no money. But still, he made sure that it was all braced and welded some gussets in and things like that and braced it up properly. So she's definitely got another 40,000 Ks in it. But just with the cooking that we're sort of doing now and that, we just opted to go for a bit bigger smoker and that sort of stuff, because we do, especially if there's a comp where there's any more than sort of 4 proteins, we sort of do struggle for room just with the sort of the size pit that we do have. So we always cook on a gateway and that as well. But it was just more of let's just get a new smoker. The whole team has put a little bit of an input into what they think that we need and what we don't really use with this sort of trailer. It was just a perfect fit that we're going to go with a new smoker as well.
Very cool. And so are you sticking with the stick burner, or are you moving to I actually saw a pellet trailer when I was over in WA at the end of the year.
Oh, wow. We're still sticking with the stick burner, of course. We're actually moving into reverse flow.
That's interesting.
So, with all the classes that we've done with low and slow and things like that, sort of to really develop a love for the reverse flow, because them guys have got a few radar hills of robs and things like that, and just being able to use those at low and slow and cook with those, you really do get an appreciation of how sort of even a temp that they actually do get. So we're moving into the reverse flow side of things.
Well, I'm really excited to see how that all turns out. And are you going, like you said, you're going a bit bigger? How big are you going? 24, 26, 30?
Yeah, we're doing I think it's 32 inch.
32, wow.
32, 3 shells. And it's off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly how long it is. But, you look at like Primal Iron's sort of trailer and that them guys have. They do a bit of catering and things like that. But, that thing is just a beast. Or even the pit that the Mafias have got, it's another weapon. So they're just sort of thing that with the amount of kilometres that we use or that we do, we need to be able to sort of carry a bit of the weight sort of thing that we need as well. So it's definitely going to be a dual axle trailer and be up for the travel.
So are we going to get an exclusive scoop here on the show? Is Country Boys getting into pop-ups and vending?
No, not at all. We get asked that a bit through message and things like that. We're just happy to keep ourselves just doing this as a hobby. As far as pop-ups or things like that, no, we're not. We just don't have the time between everyone with their day jobs and family. You've got to find that happy sort of medium, and I think that we've got it as a team. So, definitely none of that. It's just because of the amount of cooks that we're actually trying to do this year, and, with the SCA and the KCBS and SCA side of things, it was just let's just get a bigger pit. Go big or go home sort of thing.
You're listening to the internationally awarded Smoking Hot Confessions podcast with massive barbecue nerd Ben Arnott.
Alrighty, so we briefly mentioned Harvey Bay there when we were talking about your trailer and how it you remembered that the chassis was cracked just before you left. Was that your first competition so far this year?
Yes, mate. Yeah, it was. That was our introduction to 2020, yeah.
All right. Tell us all about it. I wasn't able to get there this year.
It's a great event. That was our second year doing it. It's been running for 3 years. That was our second time competing there. It's a great venue. It definitely is. The accommodations right there. The guys have got a great little hotel, and it's on grass, which is even better.
Always a winner when it's on grass.
That's it. So, I mean, I think there was 25 or 27 teams there this year. And, I mean, we had guys come up from Sydney even to compete. You know, it's just a great little competition. Ali puts on a great comp.
Wow, who was that came up from Sydney?
I can't remember his name, mate. Sorry.
It's all right. Wasn't Lucas then?
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't Lucas. He got first place ribs. That's all I can remember. Scotty there, East Blacklands. I was just laughing. Even Lucas brings him up, wins first place ribs. He comes up, he won first place in ribs.
Yeah, there must be something special they've got there at East Blacklands.
Absolutely.
Didn't they just win Butcher of the Year at the ABA Awards?
Yeah, they did. They did.
That must be why.
This is it. I mean, it's only a little shop. I've been there myself, and I think Scott's just an all-round great bloke. Even outside of barbecue and things like that. So it was just, it's a nice little boutique sort of shop. It's just great.
Beautiful stuff. It sounds like the Harvey Bay competition is starting to build a bit of a reputation for itself. I think last year I was there, I think there was 19 teams. You said there was 26 or 27 there this year. Do you think it's got room to grow in that site, or will they need to move to another site next year?
If they wanted to grow, I think they're going to have to move. It's only a small little oval that we actually get to go on. But I mean, from everybody that was vending there, I know that the Smoking Hot Bros vended there, and they actually sold out of all their sort of burger rolls. They did over 800 burgers.
They do a great job.
Oh, absolutely. So to be able to do that in the sort of the 4 or 5 hour time frame that they actually had for selling, it was Chris and the boys done amazing. So, and there's plenty of other vendors there as well. But for the competition guys, as I say, it was just great. The Harvey Bay people were just so warm and loving as well.
Yeah, Ali, the promoter, really seems to put the teams first. I think she puts a lot of work into making sure that everyone's got what they need, and the conditions are great. Like as we said, the grass, and there's a swimming pool there, which is important because I know how hot that competition gets there on Australia Day.
Oh, it's just so family friendly as well. I mean, last year, my wife and kids came along and had the weekend there. My kids were always in and out of the pool. You know, a lot of the teams brought their families. You know, the dinner there on the Friday and Saturday night, because we stayed both nights, is just great. You know, it's just great for being able to take the family. You know, there's hotel there right at on site where the barbecue comp is as well. So you just walk to your room. That's another great comp. It's one that we look forward to.
Yeah, and the beach is only about 3 blocks away, I think.
Yeah, well, being a boy from the bush, Ben, I'm not sort of into the beats and the sand and everything like that. I could smell the salt air, that's for sure, but I never got to see any water.
Oh, fair enough. I'm the opposite. I have to get in the ocean regularly or my skin goes funny. It's weird.
Well, being right on the Gold Coast, I mean, I've been to your house before too as well. So, I mean, being right on the Gold Coast, you got the best beach, don't you?
Yeah, we are pretty spoiled. So Harvey Bay is probably going to be one of the closer competitions that you're going to do to your home base there in 2020. We've already established that you've done 41,000 kilometres on the trailer last year. You've visited a couple of different states. When it comes to road tripping for barbecue, how do you get yourself organised? How do you choose your competition? Sort of take us through the process. How do you put all that together?
So being able to choose your competitions, you've got to really think about, who's going to go with you if you can't do it. Are you going to be able to drive there and back and things like that in the allocated time? If you don't, and you're going to do a fly in and fly out sort of thing, this year for Meat Stock Melbourne, we're going to do the SCA and Meat Stock Melbourne. So we're not going to drive down, we're flying down. So it's going to be using other people's gear and find a home underneath someone's marquee sort of thing for the Saturday and then just hang out on the Sunday. So for those sorts of things, you've got to just put your feelers out through the barbecue community. Hey, who can bring us a Weber? Has somebody got some spare grill grates? And, generally people are so willing to help. I mean, as I said before, I've been able to cook over at Adelaide, and Dan Cohen over there was more than happy to, organise us some gear and help us out when we went over to Adelaide for a cook. If we cook in Sydney, for instance, even though we've got a run sheet of what we've got to pack and what we've have to take with us, doesn't mean it always makes it into the ute or onto the trailer sort of thing.
I hear that.
So I'm for always borrowing different pieces. I mean, Lucas and I, if we're at the same competition, we find ourselves next to one another a lot, and it's always, Lucas, can I have a roll of paper towel? Lucas, I forgot to bring the bottled water. There's always something that either of us have forgotten that the other person's got. But it's the same with any other barbecue team. This weekend it was cake racks. So the weekend just gone up at there, I went and seen Primal Line and hit them guys up and said, look, I've left my cake racks at home. Knew exactly where they were. I left them on the bench. And the guys from Primal Line are like, here's one of our cake racks. Bring it back at the end of the day sort of thing. It's too easy. So, I mean, so that's the what's happened with us in the past and being able to borrow sort of gear. As I said before, choosing the sort of competition. If your sponsors are involved, you need to obviously get behind and help your sponsors out, because without them, your barbecue sort of can suffer. So you want to be able to pay back to your sponsor and everything that you do and show them some appreciation. So anything around Brisbane sort of area, just to showcase how good a quality stuff that we do have at Low and Slow and things like that. And Firebrand, for instance, if they are sponsoring a comp, well, then you're obviously going to jump on with them guys and be part of their sponsored teams there. Your meat stocks and things like that. Lane's Barbecue normally pop up at the meat stock events. So being that we're a sponsored team of theirs as well, we sort of jump on board and go to them. But meat stock and Paul and Bronny's comp up at Bundaberg are normally on the same weekend at Sydney, the meat stock in Sydney, and Bronny's barbecue battle are normally on the same weekend. So tend to go up to Bronny's because she does put on another great competition herself. Her and Paul are just wonderful people as well. So we tend to find ourselves driving just only the 350, 400 Ks up the road rather than 1,000.
Yeah. I was very lucky. They were my neighbours 3 years in a row at the Burleigh barbecue competition. They are beautiful, beautiful people.
Oh, they're amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, her first year doing the barbecue battle, we were up there and we were actually right next door to Brett from Lane's Barbecue. And I think even back then when I first met her, she's just so warm and caring, and it's all about the teams. And I mean, with her and Paul, obviously, they've made it into a career now, and that sort of thing with their barbecue pop-ups and things that they do as well. So, I mean, they're just wonderful people.
Yeah, what I love the most about them is that they're not the kind of people where you have a conversation with them and then you have to walk away and think about the conversation and think about what did it really mean.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
they say what they mean and they mean what they say, and it's always just honesty and truth.
Yeah.
And just straight down the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were talking about choosing competitions where sponsors are involved. So you were talking about how Lanes is involved in meat stock and that sort of thing. Have you ever been to the Sun Pork competition in, I want to say, Kingaroy?
Yeah. Yes, I have.
I thought that was kind of, I haven't been out there yet, but I thought it was an interesting concept that a sponsor would actually be a promoter of the event, not just a sponsor inside somebody else's event. Do you know of any others out there?
Well, Grant Coleman used to put on a comp, and we used to use his beef down there as well when he was at the Wing and Beef. So it was I forget what it was called.
That's right. Smoke in the Valley.
Smoke in the Valley, that's it. So, you'd get a grass-fed and a grain-fed wing and beef brisket, and Grant would also supply the chicken, and we did do pork as well from Sun Pork. So it's very similar in the way that the Sun Pork Festival sort of worked as well.
And how was that that Sun Pork Festival?
Look, I thought it was great. It was one of those competitions. We've done it two times now, and both times we've got RGC there. So you slowly get to know where your flavors are going to work with competition barbecue, and we find within sort of on the eastern side of Australia sort of thing, our flavors work pretty good, because we're always up there in the competitions. Like Bangalore, for instance, our first year at Bangalore, we finished third. The next year we finished third, and then Lucas and I went as GC and RGC together. So we knew that we were eventually going to sort of get there. We just had to fine tune some things because, they really liked our sort of flavour profile. Your competition on the Gold Coast, I've done that twice, and our sort of flavours didn't work there on the Gold Coast. We sort of just hung around the middle of the pack, so to be, as a mid-packer. But when we do like Bundaberg, our pork ribs and our beef up there, a hit up there. So with the Sun Pork, we RGC'd twice there. So it's sort of one of those things where you just sort of keep going back if you score pretty highly or you're up there, sort of go back and we write down all of our recipes that we use, which is pretty much the same thing over again. But I could tell you the sort of what pork sauce I had at Melbourne Meat Stock when I went and done Melbourne Meat Stock in 2017.
Oh, right. Wow. So you're that consistent with the different products that you use?
Pretty much. Sort of once we found what products work well with one another, we sort of always just stuck to a sort of a base sort of thing with the sauces that we use and things like that. Sort of just tend to tweak it a little bit for sort of different areas that we go to.
Very nice. Very cool. Now, you did mention earlier that the competition in Bangalore where you and Lucas kind of teamed up together, That was the year that I was up there with you as well. It was Lucas on the corner, and then you, and then us, and then Double Barrel Barbecue. I don't know how we ended up on that row with you guys. We should have been way out the back, but I got to watch you and Lucas work together. You were both there competing solo, but it was just seamless the way that you two work together. Now, earlier in today's interview, you were saying about how you have up to 8 people on a team. So what's it like competing solo versus competing in a team?
Well, competing solo, I mean, you've really got to make sure that you have got a run sheet. You know what you're going to do at particular times. You've got to make sure you hit what you call hitting your timelines. You've got to make sure that you hit your timelines. Got to make sure that you've got an easy to read sort of run sheet. You've got to make sure that you've got a refined sort of solo cook that you can do. If the hand-in windows are only half an hour and things like that, do you really need to be slicing 2 briskets to find out which brisket is better, or just baby the one brisket, make it the best that you've got? You don't want to take any shortcuts when you're by yourself, because if it doesn't work, down the road it's going to take you twice as long, so you're going to end up sort of wasting more time. And pretty much don't do anything that you haven't tried before. If you want to stick to tried and true methods that you've used before, you don't want to be trying anything new just because it's easier when you're by yourself, because you can get flustered and you can get sort of distracted as well. So you don't want to be, oh no, if I skip that, I can skip that step, I can do it. You want to absolutely stick to your timelines.
Yeah, very important. Now, you mentioned the run sheet before. I've seen everything from a cardboard box torn up with Sharpie writing on it, all the way up to iPads connected to 42-inch plasma screens put up inside the tent. Where do you guys fit in terms of your run sheets? Do you put it on paper and stick it on a whiteboard, or is it just written on the whiteboard in whiteboard marker?
It's written on a whiteboard for people to see, but also to, when it, as you say, with like competing solo and things like that, I'll go through and write out a run sheet. If it's just like Dave and myself, the good thing about working with Dave is I'll say, like, okay, it says here 5 minutes, we've got to spritz the brisket, and Dave will be like, well, I've just done it, because we're so sort of in tune with one another. He's always right there, sort of thing, being able to jump in and do any part of the cook. So, it's just pretty much the whiteboard's there for people to see, but we do have a piece of paper that people can look at and see where we're up to.
Got a project you'd like to work on with the SHC team? Shoot Ben an email on ben@smokinghotconfessions.com and let's have a conversation.
Alrighty, so in the third part of this podcast episode, we're going to talk open beef. So I'm pretty much just going to throw it all over to you, and you can share all your insights into open beef. I'm fascinated to hear what you have to say.
Well, I think with the open categories that we've been able to do, rather than just your main 4 or 5 with the lamb, I think the open categories myself are a great thing. And I think open beef is such a great way to be able to showcase how good, Australian produce actually is. We're a big beef nation, and I do believe that we should be able to turn in a nice rib fillet steak and put it up against a brisket. I really do. The judges are trained enough that they know what they like. When it comes to taste, well, they like that taste, they'll score it accordingly. There's the argument of how does a steak cooked in 5 minutes outdo a 10-hour brisket sort of thing when they're two totally different cooks. Well, that's the the game we play. Are you prepared to put up a nice Wagyu steak up against a brisket sort of thing? There's nothing to say that you can't put both cuts of meat into the box and try your luck that way. We did open beef at the Ipswich barbecue comp that was on in 2019, and our box was steak, and we also turned in some burn ends, and I think we got second or third place in the open beef category. So I'm definitely an open category sort of person where I do believe that we should be showcasing exactly how good we can cook in that regard.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point that you make there, because the judges are trained, but they're not trained to evaluate degree of difficulty. That's not a criteria. So when it comes down to it, it is all about taste. And I've heard some teams say that they will put in a steak as part of a strategy. So if they think that that a ton of people are putting in brisket, they'll put in a steak just to give the judges something different to sort of grab their attention. What do you think of that as a strategy?
Absolutely. I mean, burn ends being that soft beef marshmallow sort of goodness that they are, but also to having a Wagyu steak with, a real creamy sort of texture and that as well. I mean, if you can put both pieces in a box and do them well, I think you've got a better chance of winning that particular category. I really do.
I do love the idea of opening up a box like yours and seeing the Wagyu steak and the burnt ends. I love that idea. It's actually making me hungry right now. We shouldn't even be talking about it. But as a butcher, what insights do you have into different cuts that we might start seeing in open beef? Like what's underutilized that would grab a judge's attention?
What cut? I mean, people don't. We always jump for the rib fillet steak if we're going to do a steak cook. I think sirloin steak is a great steak to be able to cook as well. It's the bigger piece of meat in a T-bone. I do believe that cooked well. Your eye fillets, if it's not cooked super well or it doesn't have a lot of marbling, can sort of dry out. People are doing a lot of sort of skirt steak at the moment, slicing it really thin. That there is a fall apart meat if it's cooked properly as well. So there's definitely a few cuts around that people are sort of experimenting with, and it won't take long till somebody develops an amazing way of cooking it to be able to showcase it up against a 10-hour brisket.
Interesting. Skirt steak versus 10-hour brisket. I would love to see that. Well,
this is the thing. It's just one of those categories that when you start to nail a particular protein and a particular cut and you start to master it and you get it right all the time, it's going to be your go-to, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt. Do you think we're going to see things like shin, for example? I've seen some beautiful photos of low and slow beef shin coming up through Instagram at the moment. What do you think of that?
I mean, shin and that sort of thing is really good for pulled. So if you wanted to include that in some beef pulled, now I've put some boxes up on for people asking before. If you've overcooked your brisket, what have you turned in? And I've shown people that actually I have turned in pulled brisket and burn ends, but you've got to make it tasty. Everyone else has turned in slices, and Wingham was a perfect example. I actually turned in a box that was pulled beef and 2 rows of burnt ends, and we got a 5th place call for that. You've just got to make sure that it tastes good, and you've also got to make sure that it just doesn't look like any other pulled beef or some pulled pork or whatever. You've got to make it visually appealing, because that's where it all starts. When they open the box, make it visually appealing that they want to eat it, and they've already got some sort of this is going to taste good. You know, you eat with your eyes first sort of thing. So definitely, if you overcook your brisket, you need to make sure that it's, if you're going to be able to pull it, that it actually does look visually appealing.
Beautiful. And so is that much the same for things like beef cheeks then?
Beef cheeks, we sort of, because of the sort of gelatinous fat that they have, we sort of tend to make sure that if we do turn in beef cheeks, and we have done before, that we when we do actually start to pull them, we try and get into finer sort of strands, and any sort of gelatinous fat will sort of be able to wipe off with a paper towel and showcase the bark more than anything as well.
Ah, some good tips there. Very cool.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about the steak and burnt ends. What would be some other top combos people should be considering?
Some other combos. I mean, with it's another. It doesn't have to be just steak, and it doesn't have to be just brisket. I mean, as we've just said before, there's no reason why we couldn't turn in some pulled beef shin, but also do some beef ribs, lay some beef ribs out nicely, do some beef ribs into cubes and put those in the box as well. Like it's pretty much endless what you want to do. You could put in some nice chuck slices that are cooked really well. I mean, if you haven't tried a chuck on the barbecue, which is sort of with the way that the animal is, it's sort of like a sister steak, comes right off from where the brisket comes off, sort of thing, up around the neck and that as well, but it also comes down in that part. It's another great cut. It's got another big muscle that runs through the center of it, which is the end of the rib fillet sort of thing that runs up through there. So if you take that muscle out and rub it and get a nice bark on it, it's amazing too. So even turning in those sorts of slices as well. Pulled chuck is another thing that you'd be able to do. The eye of a silver side, if we could get that and cook that fairly well, there's another cut that you'd be able to turn in that'd be beautiful. Round, slice really thin, almost shaved, is another great sort of barbecue thing. We've had that before. I've never actually turned it in, but just on sandwiches and things like that, it'd be great. Just add your sauce and make sure you've got some salt to go with it, because we all know that beef can take a bit of salt. So make sure that you've got that. But there's plenty of combinations for an open beef. We have such a great beef industry, and being able to showcase it through an open beef category, rather than just, briskets and things like that. We need the open beef category.
Mate, you have taken the words right out of my mouth, and hopefully if we make some of the other cuts a bit more popular, maybe the cost of brisket will come back down and be a bit more affordable again.
Well, I'm hoping so, mate. As I say, every brisket that I did when I was an apprentice used to end up in diced beef sort of thing. So it's I can't believe that it's such, $20 a kilo for a brisket.
Oh, mate, when I first started cooking brisket around 2012, 2013, somewhere around there, I'd go and buy a whole, pack of brisket for $40, $50, and I just bought 2 to do for the Smoking Hot Confessions Christmas party at the end of the year. And, mate, I walked out of there with $250 for 2 briskets.
Absolutely. But I mean, with the way that Australia's unfortunately gone through with, we had those floods up north earlier, and then now that we've had all these fires and things like that, it's going to push the cost of beef even higher now. It will. Yeah, not a pretty picture to be looking at there, but at least the fires seem to be abating at the moment. So that's great news. Absolutely. Well, all right, man. That sort of rounds us out to about an hour now. So I'm going to throw the studio over to you. Give some shout outs to whoever you'd like, and tell everybody where they can follow Country Boys BBQ. No worries. Well, it's just a shout out to everybody that makes barbecue great. Really, we've got lots of friends out there. As I said, our mates down in Sydney. Also to, obviously, my mate Lucas, Scotty from East Blacklands, James and the team from Butterbeard. Pretty much everybody that is going out and cooking barbecue, buddy. Country Boys is on Facebook as Country Boys BBQ. On Insta, it's Country Boys BBQ Australia. They're our two sort of social media platforms that we use. Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. Well, look, I'm just going to say thank you very much for coming on board the show and sharing all that fantastic information with us. I'm hoping people were taking notes, because you were dropping some absolute gold there, man. Thank you very much for taking your time on this evening. It's we're after 9 o'clock now. It's on a school night, so I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. No, thank you, Ben. Thanks for having us. One other thing, and Seven Sins Barbecue from America. Them guys have been with us. They were our first sponsor, and them guys are great. They're family. So thanks. I actually met Jesse up at Toowoomba in 2018. Yep. He's a top dude. Mate, he is a great bloke. As I said, he's family for us. He stayed at our house. We went and stayed in the States with him and his family. He was our first sponsor. He's always, even now, is up for giving us advice and tips and things like that. His products are absolutely amazing. There's so many teams that get out and use his rubs, in particular his pecan rubs and things like that. It's just amazing. So we pick those up, I think, from like Smoke and Sorcery, and I know that Low and Slow Meat Co. also stock them as well. And I mean, you can hit up Lucas at Roll and Smoke. He's just got a whole heap in. So Jesse's definitely done some good things for Australian barbecue for sure. There you go, folks. You heard it. Hit up Lucas, raid his personal stash. That's it. And that's it for today's show, folks. Massive shout out to Dan from Country Boys BBQ for coming on board the confessional. And if you know Dan personally, then you'll know he is a busy, busy man. So we were very privileged to have had him here with us today. He's already kicking some serious goals this early in 2020. Got a good couple of call-ups there up in Harvey Bay. So I'm keen to see how the rest of the year is going to pan out for him, and I'm sure that you are too. So that is it for today. I'm going to leave you with one last thought. If you're looking for the hottest barbecue merch out there, head on over to smokinghotconfessions.com/shop and check it out. There's a link in the description for this episode. And if you buy a shirt, a cap, or a tumbler, I will love you forever, because that will give us a couple of bucks towards our trip. We're going to the NBBQA conference in Louisville in April, and I'm actually going to be presenting on stage. It is going to be awesome. Really looking forward to it. So until next time, take care of each other and keep on queuing.
Thanks for listening to the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast. Head on over to smokinghotconfessions.com for recipes, tips, and Ben's own confessions.